Hi and welcome to my new video. So in this video I'm going to explain how you can set up your Yamaha DTX Multi 12 unit to talk to the music reading program Forscore. Now Forscore is used for reading and using PDF files of scanned music. So instead of reading traditional sheet music off a music stand, some people nowadays scan it, they put it into their iPad or their tablet, and they use the program Forscore to be able to annotate, make changes, or read at a gig. And it's got all these little features in it that you can use live at the gig and things like that. So one of the big problems I had when I first started using Forscore was finding an efficient way of turning pages that suited me. And I used page turners, and I tried to use my fingers on the iPad scanning back and forth. I'll show you that in a second. But nothing seemed to work. And then one day I had the realization, hang on, maybe I can use the Yamaha unit. And I found that there was very little to no information out there on how to get a Yamaha unit to work with Forscore. And over the last 6 months I've been messing around with it, and it works beautifully if it's set up correctly. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to do that now. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that there's two main ways that you can get the Yamaha unit to work with Forscore. Now, to do that though, you've got to be able to set the Yamaha unit up to send and receive MIDI information. If you don't know what MIDI information is, you might want to go and do a bit of research on that. I'm not going to explain it here. So we need to make sure that the pads are set to send MIDI information, and I've used the Yamaha Touch app, which is an app that Yamaha have designed to work with the Yamaha unit to program the pads. Now, if you've got a Yamaha DTX Multi 12 unit and you don't have the Touch app, download it. It's so much better than trying to use the controls on the front here. You'll still need some of the controls on the front, but you won't need all of them. This is just so much more visual and easier to use. So what I've done is I've set the pads on this unit up to send MIDI data. And this pad here corresponds to this one, which is previous page. This one's next page. Okay. And I've got set lists up here, so if I hit that, all my set lists for that show will appear on the screen. Metronome, which is the metronome button here, and I've got it written as song menu, okay, meaning it's going to bring up all the scores, every single thing that I've got listed in Forscore. And I've got it in green because that's the default sort of setting on the Touch app for MIDI. So you'll also have to learn how to use the Touch app as well, which is pretty quick to learn how to use. I might do a video on that later. Alright, so once the pads are programmed with the MIDI data or the MIDI numbers that you want to send, what we've got to do is set the Yamaha unit to a setting that allows the data to transfer from here to the iPad and into Forscore. So I'm just going to change this into Forscore for a second. So I'm going to rotate that. I'll shut this app down. It'll convert and I'll open Forscore. Now, so that's Forscore open. I've currently got it set to just a random song that is Footloose, the famous song Footloose by Kenny Loggins. That's the drum score for it, or a drum score for it, that we do with the band. Alright, so what I've got to do is get the MIDI information from here into Forscore. So this is how you can go about it. Alright, so once you've set the MIDI data in your unit via the Yamaha Touch app, then what we've got to do is set the Yamaha unit up so as it knows, okay, or change the settings so as it knows which way to send the data in and out of the machine. So you can send data in and out of this machine two ways. You can send it via the USB port on the side, which is MIDI via USB or MIDI over USB. So we're going to be using a USB cable to connect the Yamaha unit to the iPad. The second way of doing it, which is the one I've adopted more recently, is to use the MIDI sockets on the back. I'll get into that setup in a minute. But to start with, what we've got to do is change this to send data via the USB port. So what we do is we go utility, and that'll take us to util 1. We then scroll across until it says MIDI. There it is, util 6, which is MIDI. We then enter that, and that takes us to 6.1. We then scroll through until it says MIDI in and out. So what that's saying is the MIDI coming in and out of this machine is going to be sent via the USB port, which is what we want. If we wanted to change it, we can press these two buttons. Now it's set to MIDI, which is the 2 ports on the back of the machine, but we don't want that right now. So MIDI via USB, that's our setting. Do we want to store it? Yes, we do. We want to put it in the memory. And there it is. So what we've just told the machine is that all the MIDI data inside these pads is going to come in and out via the USB port. Now what we've got to do is connect the Yamaha unit to the Forscore, okay? And this is how we do it. So now that you've set the Yamaha unit to USB MIDI or MIDI out via USB, what you're going to need is a USB cable to transfer that data. So this is, I guess you could consider it an old printer cable. It's got the square USB socket there and a regular or sort of old school USB socket there. So it's one of those. This is the one that goes into the Yamaha unit, so I'll do that now. And we come out of the side there, and that leaves us with this. Now that won't go into the iPad via the USB-C port because it's an old school USB cable. So there's a couple of different options that we can use. We can use an adapter like this from Apple, okay, or we can use a hub like this. This is a hyperdrive hub, and it's got the USB-C, and then it's got HDMI, USB, USB-C, and the reason why I bought this is because it's got a 3.5mm audio cable. That's really useful for sending and receiving audio files and things like audio information. So the first one I'll use is this. So what we do is plug the USB cable into the USB socket, and then we plug that into the iPad. So in theory, what we've now got is the Yamaha unit programmed with MIDI data, telling with instructions to send via the USB cable into Forscore. So then what we've got to do is go into the Forscore settings. Now what I've got here is the song Footloose by Kenny Loggins. This is the drum score that I use for the band that I'm in. And what we do is we go into settings, and this is where we figure out or sort out what these are actually going to do, because these are just numbers that Forscore interprets. So what we've got to do is go into Forscore and tell it, what do we actually want this number, this MIDI number, to actually do? So what I'm going to do is come down to page turners and shortcuts. And the first one is previous page. So previous page for me, I want to be this one. So we hit it and B107FF. That's the code for previous page, which is what I programmed into that one. The next page, oops, try that again, so I just messed it up. Then we go into that one, next page is that one, B007FF. So now the page terms are sorted out. I can then come down to scores. Now, if I want to bring up every score or every piece of music that I have in Forscore, which is sometimes useful if I'm on the gig and somebody throws a song out and says, look, we're going to do this, and it's not on the set list, I can very quickly go into my scores list and pull that up. So here's my song menu. Okay, that's B207FF. Set lists, okay, which is this one here. So this will bring up the program set list for a particular show or gig that I'm doing. So where is it? Set lists. So it's armed. And now it's set B307FF. And the middle one I use for toggling the metronome on and off. Now Forscore allows you to set a metronome for the speed of the piece of music that you've got showing on the screen. So you can have a click track going, or in the way I use it, it just gives me the tempo so as I can count the song off at the right speed. And toggle metronome is this button here. There it is, B407FF. So what that means, if I close that, alright, so that's the first page of the song. If I hit next page, it turns to the next page. If I want to go back a page, I can go back a page. If I want to bring up the set list for, I've got set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4, and other songs. Now if I want to close that, I've got to use the screen, because Forscore haven't allowed a toggling on and off, which I hope they do. Forscore, if you're listening, the programmers for Forscore, one thing I'd love is that if you can toggle the song menus and set lists on and off via the buttons, but you can't at the moment. Right, next one is song menu. So if I hit that, it brings up all the songs that I have currently in Forscore. Again, I can't hit that and turn it off, which I wish I could. I've got to actually touch it. And if I want to, I can turn the metronome for that song off. I've already set the metronome, so I've gone into the thing and programmed it. Okay, so this is giving me 12 bars of 175 beats a minute, which is what I've put the song at. Alright, so if I touch this, there you go. There's the click track for the song, and I can turn it off by just tapping it again. So that's the first way that we can do it, which is MIDI information via USB. Now, I really liked this method. The problem was that I didn't like the cables hanging off it, and I also didn't like the fact that the click track was audible. I wanted earphones or some other way of being able to hear the click track. So I ummed and ahed about it, and that's when I came up with an alternative, which is this hyperdrive hub. So what this is it just replaces this Apple adapter here, and it's got the 3.5mm audio jack, which allows me to run a set of earphones out of it, or headphones, or even a speaker or something if I want to run audio out of it. So I preferred using this, but I didn't like the fact that this cable was hanging off this tiny little USB-C socket. And one of the things I don't like about Apple iPad Pros is that they've only got one USB-C output or input, which means everything is coming and going from one USB-C port, and constant plugging in, pulling out. If you've ever been to a gig, you know how hectic it can be. I'm really worried that this is going to get knocked and something's going to get broken off inside it or something like that. And once that USB-C port goes, the whole system falls apart. You need that USB-C port. So I really wish that Apple would make their iPads with two USB-C ports. One as the main and another one as a backup if you need it. So that's another option for you, which is the hyperdrive hub if you want to use a 3.5mm audio jack. Alright, so now what we'll do is we'll move into the method that I'm using more recently, which is wireless Bluetooth, which is the way that a lot of people do page turning and interactions with Forscore at the moment. But because of this, it's a lot more powerful. So I'll get into the wireless MIDI Bluetooth option now. Okay, so the second way that you can get a Yamaha DTX Multi 12 unit to talk to an iPad and Forscore is with wireless MIDI via Bluetooth. Okay, so this is kind of a newer way of doing it. Obviously most things are Bluetooth nowadays. Now this is really good if you want to kind of replicate the equivalent of having a Bluetooth page turner. So this is an iRig Bluetone page turner that I bought when I first got Forscore, and I was messing around with it. And they work great, but I don't like the way that the pedals are so close to each other. When I'm playing drums and percussion, I might kick it with my foot and it moves, or it just doesn't work for me. It works for some drummers, and I'm aware that it's great for some people, but it just doesn't work for me. So I went looking for alternatives, and when I found out that my Multi 12 unit could actually talk to Forscore via MIDI, and I was using the cables MIDI via USB, I didn't like the cable, and I thought, it's a bit clunky, maybe there's a better way of doing it. And then I discovered this thing. Alright, so this is let me read it out properly, it's a Yamaha MD BT01. Okay, it's a MIDI via Bluetooth sender, basically. And what it does is it plugs into the back of the Yamaha unit into the MIDI sockets on the back, and it sends all the MIDI data via Bluetooth to the iPad. So suddenly you can get rid of all your cables, so all your MIDI cable and your adapter and everything, that's gone, you don't need that anymore. So you plug this into the back of the device, which I'll do now. You just got to make sure that the in goes in the in and the out comes out of the out. So that's the in, so I'll plug it in now, so that goes into the in socket, it goes into the out socket. Like that, so it's in there nice and snug. Now, the next thing we've got to do is turn Bluetooth on the iPad. So then we go to here, we go Bluetooth, it's currently off, we turn Bluetooth on. Okay. Now it's not going to come up here, okay, under the Bluetooth settings. We've got to do a third party app workaround to get it to register. And we've also got to set this up so as it sends the MIDI data out through the MIDI sockets on the back, not the USB cable. So here's a setup workaround for you. All right, so first things first, what we're going to do is set this up to be sending the data out through the Bluetooth, out through the MIDI sockets on the back. All right, so here we go. So I've put the MIDI Bluetooth sender in the back into the MIDI sockets, and I've got to change the settings here back to being so the machine sends the data via the MIDI sockets on the back. So again, we do it very similar to what we did before. We go utility, that goes utility 1, we then scroll through until we get to MIDI. Oop, I've gone too far, there it is, MIDI, enter, then scroll across until we get to MIDI in out. So it was set to USB because we were sending the data via the USB cable. What I'm going to do now is set it to MIDI. So now it's sending all the MIDI data out through the MIDI sockets on the back. Store, enter, and that'll configure that. Okay, and then I can go back to kit. All right. Now, so what that's done is it's set all the data up in here to go out through the MIDI outputs and inputs on the back instead of the USB cable. All right, now, time to go to the iPad part. So the complicated part with this, and kind of the frustrating part if you don't know what to expect or haven't done it before, is that in theory, what's meant to happen is you plug the Bluetooth unit into the Yamaha DTX Multi 12 and convert it to MIDI, and in theory the iPad is just meant to pick up the Bluetooth signal and you're allowed to connect to it like any other Bluetooth device. But it's not quite that simple because Yamaha obviously haven't spoken to Apple about getting this to work effectively, so we've got to use a third-party workaround to get it to connect. So if you just went into Forscore and then went here and then tried to find under settings, you know, where the devices are and all that sort of stuff, and page turners and all that sort of stuff, you won't find it. And not only that, but if you go into settings and go into Bluetooth, turn it off, and turn it back on, it's not listed yet, it's turned on, and in theory it's meant to work, but it doesn't. So what we've got to do is use an app, a third-party app, to tell the iPad to pick up the Yamaha unit. So the best app I found to use is the Yamaha Piano app. Okay, this is called Yamaha Digital Piano. And if you go into settings, and then you go into information, Bluetooth MIDI device, settings, and then listed Gary's M12, and it says not connected. So if I click connect, it's now connected. So what's kind of happening now is that I'm using the app to connect to the unit. And here's the odd part, and I don't understand the programming behind all this, but yeah, it does work. So then what we do is we swipe up, and then we can go into Forscore, and for some reason, I don't understand the programming behind this, but now Forscore will be able to use the piano app to communicate with the Yamaha Multi 12 unit. I don't understand the programming, but it does work. And if we go down to where is it, settings again, and we can reprogram everything again. So we can go into page turners and shortcuts, go to previous page, and there it is. Next page, there it is. Scores, there it is. Set lists, there it is. And now toggle metronome, there it is. And obviously no wires, no cables, but previous page, next page, we can go back and forth. We can go to set lists, and I can call up set list 3, which has no songs in it at the moment. Set list 2, there you go. I can go twist and shout. I can cycle through the set list as much as I want. And no cables. Now, one thing I will warn you about though, is that if you shut the Forscore app down or you turn the screen off, it'll stop communicating with the Bluetooth. So you may end up with that problem where you just the screen shuts down, or you close the screen down to save some power. Now, for the first 30 seconds to a minute, it'll probably keep communicating, but if I leave that off for say 5 minutes, go off to the bar, get a drink, whatever, set up some more equipment, go and have a chat with somebody, whatever, and then I come back and I reopen it, there is a chance that it won't communicate with it anymore. So there is a chance that I've just lost connection. No, I haven't. Okay, cool. So I've lucked out that time. So it's working okay. But obviously the benefit of this method is that it doesn't rely on cables, and now I can move the Yamaha unit as far away from the iPad as I want, within like 10 meters or something. All right, so that's that. Now, one of the other big benefits of having this connected via Bluetooth now is that this USB-C connector can now be used for something else. And what I use it for is to run what's referred to as a Peterson body beat, which is a metronome device. And I get the typical sort of 3.5mm to USB-C adapter, and that gets plugged into there. Okay, and I can run audio out of that. But in this case, what I do with it is I run this little device. Now this is what's referred to as a Peterson body beat, and it's a tactile metronome device. So what you can do is plug it in like that, and the idea is that you clip this onto your belt, or on your sleeve, into your sock or something like that. When you turn it on, instead of the app going beep, beep, beep for a metronome, you'll feel it through vibration. And what it means is that I don't have to wear headphones, things like that. So I'll turn it on, and in theory, there you go. So it's audible, but once you put it, it's quite soft. Okay, and you can feel it. You can sort of sit there and you can get a sense of how it works. And I quite like it. It works well, allows me to count the song off, and I can look around and see what everybody's doing. I can hear what everybody's doing. I don't have headphones on or earpieces in or whatever. And I can sort of work with that. And that's the way that I often run it in this band. So there you go. So there's Bluetooth MIDI and MIDI via USB for controlling Forscore. So you can just scroll through or do whatever you want. All right. Hopefully that's helped. I wish this information was around 12 months ago when I was sorting this stuff out. So again, just a bit of a review. You'll need the Yamaha Multi 12 unit, you'll need an iPad, Forscore, mess around with Forscore, make sure you know how it works. And you'll also need the Yamaha Touch app as well. And if you want to go the Bluetooth wireless MIDI option, you'll probably also need the digital piano app. Yamaha, if you are listening, I highly, highly suggest that you put the wireless Bluetooth option on the Yamaha Touch app for this device. Okay? There is absolutely no reason that I can see why you shouldn't be able to go wireless Bluetooth MIDI from a Yamaha DTX Multi 12 directly into Forscore using MIDI and using the Touch app as the interface between the two. It makes perfect sense to me. But instead I've got to go through some third-party app, which I can't guarantee is going to be available in 12-18 months' time. So yeah, I've tried to keep it all locked into Yamaha, so I've used the Yamaha apps, the Yamaha machine and the Yamaha Bluetooth unit. So hopefully it's all compatible. I have heard that the Yamaha Bluetooth adapter can, over time, if you're playing this thing a lot with sticks, can work itself loose. I don't think I'm going to have that problem because it seems to fit pretty snugly for me, and I'm only hitting the pads every now and then. Now, what I could do is also put sound effects or other items in here if I wanted to use those, or cycle through and make other kits and all sorts of stuff, and, you know, trigger all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So another thing that you can do is that on the back of the Yamaha Multi 12 unit there's inputs for different sorts of trigger pads and pedals and things like that. So this is a FS5U Boss pedal. Okay, a lot of guitarists use these. These are switching pedals for switching effects and things like this. You could put this on the floor and, as you can see, it turns the pages. Or you could set up a electric drum kit pad. Okay, this is a KP65. It's off like a DTX Yamaha drum kit. And again, you can hit that and it turns the pages. Alternatively, you could even run it into like a digital pad like this, okay, hit it with a stick or something like that. There's feasibly no reason why you couldn't even just use a regular drum trigger set on like a mesh head or something and using that to trigger this page turns and stuff as well. All right, again, hope it helps. Anyway, hopefully that helps, and yeah, helps you with your Forscore issues if you've got any. Have fun.